Too big? Just sit on it and do it, the billionaire whispered, but what happened next shocked her. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us get back to our main character. The room smelled faintly of lavender and rain. The morning class had just started at Zen Motion Studio, a tiny yoga space tucked between a coffee shop and a laundromat in downtown Seattle. 20 students stretched quietly on their mats except for one. At the back of the room stood a man in a full business suit, tie loosened, shoes still on. His expensive leather briefcase rested beside his mat like an unwanted guest. "Sir," the instructor said, blinking in disbelief, "you are supposed to remove your shoes." The man looked down, unbothered. "They are Italian," he said casually, as if that explained everything. The class giggled. The instructor, Eden Monroe, 28 yoga teacher and part-time barista, pressed her lips together. Her rent had gone up last week, and she could not afford to lose another student, even a ridiculous one like him. "All right then," she said softly, adjusting her tone. "Just try to relax your shoulders." The man exhaled and leaned forward into a pose that could only be described as boardroom panic. His wrists trembled, his tie fell onto the mat, and then came the moment that would be replayed on social media later that day. He glanced up at her with a sly smile. "Too big? Just sit on it and do it." The class froze. Someone snorted. Eden's face turned scarlet. The man, tall, handsome, probably in his mid-30s, had no idea how his words sounded out loud. Or maybe he did. Either way, the sentence hung in the air like static electricity. Eden cleared her throat. "That is not the breathing cue we use here." "Then you need better cues," he replied, dead serious, trying to balance on one leg. "Business is about risk. Yoga should be too." Half the class laughed again. The other half filmed discreetly. Eden inhaled deeply, counting to 5 in her head. Stay calm, she told herself. Enlightenment before homicide. By the time the session ended, her cheeks were still burning. She watched as Mr. Business Suit collected his briefcase and headed toward the door. He paused just long enough to hand her a business card, black, minimalist, expensive. Graham Steele, CEO, Steele Capital Group. She blinked. She had just corrected a billionaire about yoga poses. "Thanks for the class," he said, his tone gentler now. "You are tougher than you look." And then he was gone, leaving behind a trail of lavender, laughter, and utter confusion. Outside, rain tapped against the windows. Eden stared at the card, half amused, half horrified. She was sure she would never see him again. But fate, as always, had other plans. Later that afternoon, while wiping down mats, she found a sticky note stuck under the stereo. It was written in neat handwriting. "You make people breathe easier. Keep doing that." No name, just that. Her heart fluttered in a way she did not understand. For a moment, she wondered if it was from him. Have you ever met someone who turned your ordinary morning into a story you could not stop replaying in your head? Eden folded the note and tucked it inside her journal. She did not know it yet, but that simple, awkward morning, the man in the suit, the offbeat line, and that sticky note was the beginning of something far bigger than she could imagine. Because sometimes, the strangest introductions hide the most unexpected connections. And sometimes, a single embarrassing sentence can change the direction of 2 lives forever. The rain had not stopped all afternoon. By the time Eden locked up her tiny yoga studio, the city was a blur of gray streets and reflected lights. Her sneakers squeaked as she walked toward the bus stop, clutching her worn tote bag and that mysterious sticky note she had found under the stereo. She kept reading it again and again. "You make people breathe easier. Keep doing that." It felt too personal to be random. She reached the corner cafe, her usual stop before heading home, and ordered the cheapest latte on the menu. The barista, a friend from college, leaned over the counter. "You look like you just saw a ghost," he said. Eden smiled faintly. "Not a ghost, just a man in a business suit doing yoga." He laughed. "Sounds like a meme already." She sighed. "It might be. Someone filmed the class." "Then you are famous by tomorrow," he teased. She rolled her eyes, sipped her coffee, and stared at the rain. Somewhere across the city, she imagined Graham Steele back in his glass office, completely forgetting about the embarrassing morning. People like him did not remember people like her. Still, when her phone buzzed that evening with a text from an unknown number, her heart skipped a beat. From unknown. Thank you for not laughing at me today. Jesus. Eden blinked. So he did have her number. She remembered now he had signed in for class with his personal phone. She hesitated before replying. You gave me plenty of reasons to laugh. But I will accept the apology. A few dots blinked. Then another message appeared. Coffee tomorrow? My treat. She almost typed no but paused. Rent was due, her studio needed repairs, and curiosity was stronger than pride. The next morning, she arrived early at the same cafe. The rain had cleared, leaving the air crisp and bright. Graham walked in exactly on time. No suit today, just a navy sweater and jeans. He looked surprisingly normal, even approachable. You look different without the tie, she said as he sat down. And you look less terrified, he replied. Maybe we are both improving. Eden laughed, relaxing a little. He ordered black coffee, no sugar, no cream, and asked her about her studio. She told him about her dream of opening a community class for people who could not afford expensive gyms. He listened quietly, elbows resting on the table, expression thoughtful. When the bill came, he slipped his card to the waiter. Consider this your first investor meeting. Eden frowned. I did not ask for money. I know, he said calmly, but I like what you are building. She shook her head, unsure if he was serious or just playing the billionaire card for amusement. You barely know me. That is what meetings are for, he said with a half smile. Later that day, as she returned to the studio, she found another sticky note on the door. This one was tucked under the handle, written in the same neat handwriting. Dreams grow when someone believes in them. There was no signature, but she did not need one. That evening, the phone rang again, this time, a call. Eden. His voice was lower, almost careful. I have a strange proposition. I need someone to pretend to be my fiancé for a few weeks. It is complicated, but I will explain everything. She nearly choked on her tea. You are joking. I am serious, he said. It is just business. My board thinks I am unstable after canceling a merger. They want to see stability. A relationship helps with optics. So I am supposed to fix your corporate image? Think of it as a contract, he said smoothly. You get full funding for your studio. I get peace for 3 weeks. Eden laughed, unsure if she was insulted or intrigued. You are unbelievable. I am practical, he countered. Meet me tomorrow at Steel Tower, 10th floor, 9 a.m. If you hate the idea, you can walk away. The call ended before she could respond. She sat there for a long time, staring at her reflection in the dark window. Outside, the neon sign of the laundromat flickered like a heartbeat. Was this insane? Absolutely. But so was a man doing yoga in a business suit. And somehow, that ridiculous morning had already changed everything. She picked up a new sticky note, wrote one sentence, and pressed it onto her mirror before bed. Say yes to the strange things, sometimes they lead to miracles. She smiled, turned off the light, and let the city hum outside her window. Tomorrow would not be an ordinary morning. The next morning, Eden stood in front of the tall glass building of Steel Tower, clutching her tote bag like a shield. The skyscraper gleamed under the early sun, all polished steel and tinted windows. It felt like walking into another planet, one where every breath cost money. She checked her reflection in the revolving door. Her hair was pulled into a neat bun, and her plain white blouse was the best she owned. She whispered to herself, say yes to the strange things. Then she stepped inside. The lobby was enormous, filled with echoing footsteps and people in sharp suits. A receptionist looked up with a polite but distant smile. Name? Eden Monroe. I have a meeting with Mr. Steele. The woman's eyes flickered with surprise. You do? She pressed a button on the phone. Mr. Steele's guest is here. Moments later, an assistant appeared, guiding Eden into a sleek elevator. As it climbed, she could feel her pulse quicken. When the doors opened, the view took her breath away. The entire floor was surrounded by glass. Seattle sprawled out below like a living map. Graham stood near the window, sleeves rolled up, phone in hand. He looked different here, focused, commanding. When he saw her, he ended the call and smiled. You came. I said I would listen, she replied, trying to sound calm. Good. Then let us get to the point. He handed her a folder labeled Agreement. Inside were typed pages, clean and official. Clause 1, he began. You will attend 3 public events with me, a charity gala, a press dinner, and a weekend retreat. Clause 2. You will not discuss personal matters with the media. Clause 3. You will receive a grant for your yoga studio once the term ends. In Blinkel. You actually wrote a contract for this? I am a businessman, he said simply. Everything has terms. She read through the pages, her fingers trembling slightly. You forgot a clause, she said finally. I will not lie to anyone directly. He looked amused. Then what is the point of pretending? I can play along, she said, lifting her chin. But I will not fake a smile if it is not real. Quote, for the first time, he looked at her differently, not as a prop in his corporate plan, but as someone who could stand her ground. Deal, he said quietly, extending his hand. She hesitated, then shook it. His grip was warm, steady, confident. Something in that simple touch unsettled her more than she wanted to admit. A few minutes later, the assistant brought in coffee. On the saucer beneath Eden's cup was another sticky note, small, yellow, folded twice. Every big leap starts with a shaky step. Eden glanced at Graham, who was pretending to review documents, but a hint of a smile betrayed him. Do you leave motivational notes everywhere you go? She asked. Only for people who need them, he said. She laughed softly. Then you must think I need a lot. Maybe, he said, looking out the window. Or maybe I do. The room fell quiet for a moment. Outside, clouds moved across the skyline, casting shadows that slid over the floor like water. Eden studied him. He was every bit the billionaire stereotype, tall, confident, detached. But there was something in his eyes that did not match the rest. It was a flicker of exhaustion, maybe loneliness, that even money could not hide. Have you ever met someone who hides behind success because they are terrified of what happens when they slow down? She gathered the folder and stood. All right, Mr. Steele, I will do it. But if this backfires, I am walking away. Fair enough, he said. Our first appearance is this Saturday. A charity gala at the Grand Regent. You will need a dress. I have one, she said quickly. He raised an eyebrow. Does it match the chandeliers? She narrowed her eyes. Does your suit bend in a yoga pose? He laughed, actually laughed, and for the first time, she saw a crack in the armor of the powerful man everyone feared. As she left the office, the note in her hand fluttered slightly. She folded it carefully and slipped it into her pocket. She could not explain why, but a small part of her was starting to believe it. Saturday arrived faster than Eden expected. The Grand Regent Hotel stood like a palace, golden light spilling from its massive windows. Valets rushed between luxury cars, and photographers crowded near the entrance. Eden had spent the entire cab ride repeating one thought in her head. Do not trip. Do not say anything stupid. Breathe. She stepped out, wearing a soft emerald gown she had borrowed from a friend. The dress was simple but graceful, the color making her eyes look brighter than usual. Graham was waiting by the red carpet, dressed in a perfectly cut black tuxedo. When he saw her, his usual cool expression softened. You clean up well, he said, offering his arm. So do you, she replied, though her stomach twisted into knots. Cameras flashed as they entered the ballroom. People turned, whispering, curious about the woman on Graham Steele's arm. The chandeliers sparkled overhead like frozen fireworks. Music floated through the air, elegant and distant. Eden tried to focus on breathing evenly, the same way she told her students to do in class. But the smell of perfume and champagne mixed with anxiety in her chest. A tall woman in a sequined gown approached them. Graham, darling, we did not expect you tonight. Her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. And who is this? Before he could answer, Eden extended her hand with a calm she did not feel. Eden Monroe. I teach yoga, and occasionally fake engagements. The woman blinked, unsure whether it was a joke. Graham nearly choked on his champagne, then laughed, a real laugh that drew surprised glances from nearby guests. Eden has a unique sense of humor, he said smoothly. Apparently, the woman murmured before drifting away. When they reached their table, Eden exhaled. Was that your ex? Something like that, he said. A walking press release. Despite the tension, she caught herself smiling. For the first time, she saw how he endured these events. Every handshake was calculated, every compliment rehearsed. It was exhausting to watch. Dinner began, and a server refilled glasses as the host took the stage to announce donations. When it was Graham's turn to speak, he rose, buttoned his jacket, and glanced toward Eden. My company is proud to support the community, he said into the microphone, his voice steady. "But tonight I learned something from my fiancée." Eden froze. This was not in the script. "She reminded me that success means nothing if you cannot breathe easy," he continued. "So tonight Steel Capital will double its donation to fund wellness programs for workers across Seattle." Applause filled the room. Cameras flashed again. Eden could hardly process what had just happened. When he sat down, she whispered, "You just promised millions of dollars because of a joke I made." "It was not a joke," he said quietly, "and I do not break promises." For a moment, she could not look away from him. Beneath the tuxedo and confidence, there was sincerity she had not expected. Later, as the orchestra began another song, he leaned close. "Dance with me?" She shook her head. "I do not dance." "Then let us both be terrible together," he said, holding out his hand. Eden hesitated, then took it. On the dance floor, they moved awkwardly at first, bumping shoulders, laughing. The crowd around them blurred into a swirl of color and sound. For once, Graham looked free, no board members, no headlines, just a man enjoying the moment. When the song ended, applause rippled again. Eden felt breathless. "Maybe you are not as bad as I thought." "Maybe neither are you," he said softly. They left the dance floor, still laughing. But as they passed a row of tables, Eden caught a reporter snapping photos. Her name would be everywhere by morning. Have you ever been caught between pretending and feeling something real? Outside, the night air was cool against her skin. Graham's car waited at the curb, headlights reflecting off the wet pavement. She glanced back once at the ballroom, still glowing behind them. Somewhere deep down, she knew the act was starting to feel a little too real. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the windows of Graham's penthouse like liquid gold. Eden stood barefoot in the kitchen, wearing one of his oversized shirts as she made coffee. The smell filled the air, warm, familiar, grounding. She had stayed the night in the guest room because he insisted it was safer after the gala chaos. Her name and photo were already all over the internet. Mysterious fiancé of billionaire Graham Steele. She scrolled through headlines on her phone. Some called her elegant. Others hinted that she was a gold digger. A few had even found her old yoga class page and flooded it with comments, some kind, some cruel. When Graham walked in, still in his t-shirt, hair slightly messy, he looked surprisingly human. "You are trending," he said, setting his phone on the counter. "I noticed," she said quietly. "Apparently, I am either an angel or a scam artist." He poured himself coffee. "The internet needs a new hobby." Quote. Eden leaned against the counter, studying him. "You did not warn me this would happen." "I did not expect it to blow up this fast," he admitted. "I underestimated how interested people are in my private life." "That is the thing," she said. "This is not my private life anymore either." He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "You are right. I will handle it." "How?" "I have a PR team. They will spin the story. They will say we met at a wellness event and kept it private until now." Eden crossed her arms. "So another lie?" "It is a strategy," he said evenly. She sighed, shaking her head. "You really do not know the difference, do you?" He opened his mouth to respond, but stopped when she handed him a sticky note. On it, she had written, "Truth makes the best headline." Graham stared at the note, then tucked it into his pocket without a word. Later that day, they drove to his company headquarters for a meeting with the board. Eden was there only to complete the illusion, as he put it. But as she stepped out of the elevator, she noticed something. Everyone stared at her with curiosity, even respect. Inside the boardroom, the directors were polite but distant. The meeting dragged on numbers, forecasts, projections. Eden sat quietly, sipping water. Then one director, an older man with silver hair, turned toward her. "So, Miss Monroe," he said with a smile that was not kind, "how does yoga prepare you for the pressures of being engaged to a man like Mr. Steele?" Eden smiled politely. "Yoga teaches balance," she said. "It also teaches how to stay calm when people underestimate you." The room went silent for a second. Then Graham let out a small laugh. "Gentlemen, I think she just outperformed our PR team." When the meeting ended, he guided her out with a hand at her back. "You handled that perfectly," he murmured. "Years of practice," she said. "I faced tougher critics in morning classes." He smiled, but something in his expression softened. "You know, I do not think I have laughed this much in years. Maybe you just needed better company," she teased. As they reached the lobby, a sudden flash went off. A reporter appeared out of nowhere, shoving a microphone forward. "Mr. Steele! Miss Monroe! When is the wedding?" Eden froze, heart pounding. Graham's arm tightened around her shoulders as cameras swarmed them. He smiled for the cameras, but his voice was low enough for only her to hear. Just breathe. I have got you. She did as he said, deep inhale, slow exhale. When they finally made it to the car, she laughed shakily. You really live in a storm, do you not? He started the engine. All the time, but it feels less like a storm when you are in it. Outside, the city glimmered under the afternoon light. Eden looked at him, half smiling. Careful, Mr. Steele. You are starting to sound almost peaceful. Do not tell anyone, he said, and for the first time, she believed he meant it. That night, as she wrote another note for herself, stay calm even in chaos, she realized the line between fake and real was fading faster than she could stop it. It had been a week since the gala, and the buzz around Graham and Eden had not slowed down. Every magazine headline seemed to spin a different story about them, some romantic, some scandalous, all exaggerated. Eden tried to ignore the noise, but she could feel her life shifting into something unfamiliar. She still taught morning yoga, but now her classes were full of curious new students who wanted to see the billionaire's fiancé. Graham had offered to close the studio for her safety, but she refused. If I stop teaching, then I really become the person they think I am, she said. So he compromised by assigning one of his security drivers to wait outside during her shifts. That Friday evening, after her last class, Graham appeared at the studio door. He was still in his suit, but his tie was gone, and there was a weariness in his eyes that Eden had not noticed before. You look tired, she said, handing him a bottle of water. Board meetings, he muttered. They drain the soul. Try Downward Dog, she teased. It works better than quarterly reports. Quote. He laughed softly and leaned against the wall. I actually came to ask a favor. Eden tilted her head. Another contract? No, this one is personal, he said. There is a charity retreat this weekend on Bainbridge Island. It is part of the optics deal, but it is also my escape from work. I want you to come. She hesitated. Do I have to pretend to be the perfect fiancé again? Only if you want to, he replied. No press this time. Just a few board members and their families. It will be normal. Normal. That word felt foreign, but she agreed. The next day, they boarded his private ferry to the island. The water sparkled under the afternoon sun, and the air smelled of pine and salt. For the first time, Graham looked relaxed, sitting beside her on the deck with his sleeves rolled up. This is my favorite place, he said quietly. No phones, no headlines, no pressure. Do you ever really switch off? She asked. He shrugged. I am learning. Maybe you are the teacher for that. They reached the island before sunset. The property was beautiful, wooden cabins tucked between trees, a dock stretching into the calm bay. A few families were already there, laughing, grilling dinner near the fire pit. Eden could not remember the last time she had seen Graham smile so easily. Later that night, after the guests had gone to bed, they sat outside by the water. The moonlight painted silver ripples across the surface. Eden sipped her tea and asked softly, Do you ever regret it? The money, the power, all of this? He was quiet for a long time before answering. Sometimes. I built everything to prove I could, but somewhere along the way, I stopped living for myself. She nodded. That happens to a lot of people, even without billions. He smiled faintly. What about you? What would you do if all your dreams suddenly came true? Eden looked at the stars. I would still teach. I would still write notes for my students. I would just do it without worrying about rent. He chuckled. Simple dreams? I like that. She turned to look at him. You laugh like you forgot how to for a long time. He met her gaze, and for a heartbeat, the air between them shifted quiet, tender, unguarded. Maybe I just needed the right reason to remember, he said. Have you ever found peace in the most unexpected company? They stayed there for hours, talking about small things, coffee, childhood memories, favorite songs. When the wind turned cold, Graham draped his jacket over her shoulders without a word. As she leaned back against the wooden rail, she realized something startling. This was no longer an act. For the first time, Eden was not pretending to be anyone's fiancé. She was just a woman sitting beside a man who made her heart steady and her world quiet. And she knew deep down that was what scared her most. The ferry ride back to Seattle felt heavier than before. The weekend had been peaceful, too peaceful, and now the world outside their small island bubble was waiting. Eden stood by the railing as the skyline grew closer, the wind tangling her hair. She could feel something had changed between them, even if neither dared to name it. When they docked, Graham's phone began buzzing non-stop. His expression darkened as he read the screen. "The press found out about the retreat," he said quietly. "Someone leaked photos." Eden frowned. "Photos of what?" He handed her the phone. There she was, smiling at him under the moonlight, wearing his jacket. The headline read, "The Billionaire and the Yoga Teacher. A love too perfect to be fake." Her stomach dropped. "They were not supposed to be there. You said there were no reporters." Quote, "There were not," he replied, jaw tightening. "Someone from the company must have sold the pictures. Then we tell them it was private, that it was innocent." Graham shook his head. "You do not understand. The board will see this as manipulation, as weakness. They already think I am unstable." Eden folded her arms. "So what am I supposed to do? Disappear?" His silence said everything. That night, she could not sleep. The city lights bled through the blinds, flickering across the room. Every thought came back to one question: was she just another business move to him? The next morning she walked into the studio early. Her students greeted her warmly, pretending not to notice the reporters outside the window. She taught the class as usual, focusing on her breathing, on the rhythm of movement, on control. But inside, her heart felt heavier than any pose could fix. After class, she found Graham waiting by the door. His expression was unreadable. "Can we talk?" he asked. She nodded but did not smile. They drove in silence to the waterfront, the same spot where they had first spoken openly. The wind was colder now, and the clouds hung low. "I need to end the arrangement," he said finally. Eden's hands tightened on her lap. "End it?" "Yes, before this becomes something worse. The story has grown too big, and the board is furious. They think you are a distraction. They are threatening to remove me as CEO." She let out a shaky laugh. "So you are firing your fake fiancé to save your real job." "It is not like that," he said, voice strained. "I just cannot let you get dragged through this any further. It is already hurting your reputation." "My reputation?" she echoed. "You mean your image?" He looked away. "You are right. It started as my plan. But it is not just that anymore." "Then what is it?" she demanded. He opened his mouth but hesitated. The answer lingered on his lips but never came out. "Eden shook his. You cannot even say it." She stepped out of the car, heart pounding. The air smelled of salt and rain, the same scent from the day they met. Graham followed her, standing a few steps away. "I am sorry," he said softly, "for dragging you into this." "Sorry is easy," she said, turning to face him. "Try honesty for once." "I never meant for it to feel real," he said finally. "But it did. That is the problem." The words cut deeper than she expected. She took a breath, steady but trembling. "Then I guess that is where we end between real and fake. Have you ever cared for someone who was brave in business but a coward in love?" She walked away before he could respond. The city lights shimmered off the water, blurring like tears she refused to shed. That night, back in her small apartment, she packed away the sticky notes one by one, sliding them into a drawer. But one of them slipped free and fell to the floor. It was the very first one, the one that said, "You make people breathe easier. Keep doing that." Eden sat on the edge of her bed, holding it between her fingers, and whispered, "Maybe I forgot to do that for myself." Outside, the rain began again, soft but relentless, just like the ache she could not name. A week passed, and the headlines slowly faded. New scandals replaced old ones, and Eden's face no longer appeared on the morning news. Still, the silence felt heavier than all the noise before. She went back to teaching, filling her schedule with extra classes, pretending that everything was fine. Her students could tell something was different, but no one asked. At night, she returned to her apartment and stared at the drawer where she had hidden all the sticky notes. Sometimes she took one out, just to read the handwriting she already knew by heart. "You make people breathe easier." It still made her chest tighten. Meanwhile, across town, Graham sat alone in his office long after the staff had gone home. His phone buzzed with new messages: investors, reporters, his lawyer, but he ignored them all. He stared instead at the small yellow note taped to his computer monitor. "Truth makes the best headline." He had kept it. He had kept all of them. For the first time in years, the numbers on his spreadsheets did not comfort him. His empire was intact, but something essential was missing. The board had backed off, but victory felt hollow. He thought of Eden's voice, calm, steady, teasing, and the way she made even chaos sound like peace. One evening, his assistant entered quietly. "Sir, there is something you should see." She handed him a newspaper folded to the community section. There was a picture of Eden, smiling beside a group of students at a park. The headline read, "Local yoga teacher launches free classes for mental health." Graham stared at the image. She looked happy, even radiant. The article mentioned that the program was funded by small donations from her students and local sponsors. No mention of him, no trace of scandal. Just her doing what she had always wanted, helping people breathe again. Something inside him shifted. He picked up his phone and called his foundation director. "I want to fund that program anonymously," he said. "Double whatever she has raised." "Under your name?" "No," he said. "Under hers." "Yes." The next morning, Eden arrived at her studio and found a sealed envelope taped to the door. There was no sender listed, just a simple sticky note that read, "Every good seed deserves to grow." Inside the envelope was a letter from the city's community board, confirming that her program had received a large donation from a private benefactor. Her rent for the studio would be covered for the next year. She froze, then smiled slowly. She did not need to guess who it was. Later that day, she took her class outside for the first time, teaching under the open sky. The breeze carried laughter, the smell of grass, and a strange lightness in her chest. As the class ended, she sat quietly on her mat, watching her students pack up. Have you ever realized that love sometimes shows up through quiet actions rather than words? She looked toward the horizon and whispered, "Thank you, Graham," even though he could not hear her. That night, Graham sat on his balcony, looking over the glittering skyline. He had spent his whole life chasing control, yet the one thing he wanted most came only when he let go. He took out a clean sticky note and wrote carefully, "You helped me breathe again." Then he slipped it into an envelope addressed to Mind in Motion Studio. 2 days later, Eden found it tucked between her mail. No signature, just those 7 words. She read it twice, smiling through the tears that threatened to fall. For the first time in weeks, she felt her heart open again, not to fantasy, but to something real. As the sun dipped behind the city, she pinned that note to her mirror, right beside her favorite one. The 2 messages framed her reflection perfectly. Truth, breath, peace. And somewhere across the skyline, Graham exhaled deeply, as if their hearts had finally found the same rhythm again. 3 months later, the city had settled into its rhythm again. The scandal was long forgotten, but something new had quietly taken its place. Eden's Mind in Motion program had grown faster than she ever imagined. Dozens of people attended every weekend, office workers, single parents, even teenagers who had never tried yoga before. She smiled every time she saw them walk out calmer than they came in. One crisp morning, she arrived early to open the studio. The sunlight spilled across the floor, touching the sticky notes still pinned to her mirror. They had become her morning ritual, reading them one by one before class. Truth makes the best headline. You helped me breathe again. They reminded her of everything she had learned, everything she had lost, and everything she was finally ready to face. As she arranged mats, the bell above the door chimed. She turned, expecting a student, but it was Graham. He looked different, no suit, no briefcase, just jeans, a gray sweater, and the familiar look that made her heart twist. "Hey," he said softly. She froze for a moment, then smiled carefully. "Long time no see." "I hear the classes are full," he said, glancing around. "You built something incredible." "You helped," she said, "even if you tried to hide it." He smiled faintly. Not very well, apparently. For a moment, neither spoke. The air between them hummed with unspoken things. Finally, Graham reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I have something for you." Eden hesitated before taking it. It was a contract, but not the kind she remembered. The top read, "The Steel Foundation for Wellness Partnership." She looked up. "You want to sponsor us officially?" "Yes," he said. "But there is a condition this time." Her eyebrows lifted. "Here we go again." He stepped closer, eyes warm. Clause 1. No pretending. Clause 2. No running away when things get complicated. Clause 3. He paused, smiling. Clause 3 is you have to let me stay this time. Eden stared at him, the paper trembling slightly in her hands. "You are serious." "I am," he said. "I tried to live without you. It did not work. You were right. Truth really does make the best headline." Tears pricked her eyes, but she laughed instead. "You just turned my lesson into a press quote." "Old habits," he said with a shrug. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a sticky note. She wrote something quickly, pressed it onto his palm and smiled. He looked down and read aloud, "Too big?" Just sit on it and do it. They both laughed the same nervous, ridiculous laugh that had started everything. So, she said, crossing her arms, what exactly are you asking me to do? Graham took a breath, then dropped to one knee. From his other pocket, he pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, nothing flashy. Marry me, he said quietly. No contracts, no pretending, no headlines, just us. Eden covered her mouth, tears slipping free despite her smile. You really never learn subtlety, do you? He shook his head. Not when it comes to you. The students who had begun arriving stopped at the door, gasping softly as they realized what was happening. The morning light poured through the windows, turning everything golden. Eden nodded, laughing through the tears. Yes, Graham, I will. Applause filled the studio as he slipped the ring onto her finger. He stood, pulling her into a gentle hug. For the first time, it did not feel like performance, it felt like home. Have you ever noticed that the best stories begin with mistakes that turn into miracles? Weeks later, their small wedding took place right there in the studio, surrounded by friends, students, and laughter. On the mirror behind them, one final sticky note read, "Love is the best balance pose." And as they danced barefoot on the wooden floor, the world outside faded away. No titles, no rumors, no contracts, just two people who had finally learned how to breathe again, together.